tax formula. I'm actually not going to spend a ton of time here. I mean, you could really go deep into the tax flow and all its nuances. This highlight was put together, and for those of you that have gone through the Bryant and BIF CFP education program, you know this is the first real stop in our tax planning classes. And what I urge all of our students to do is to start with the tax flow. All right there on your highlight. This is something that I'd encourage you to memorize outright, just that image. And basically what happens in our individual tax system is that everything that you earn, all the money that you have throughout a given period, goes through this funnel, and along the tax flow, we have little points where there's the potential to reduce that. And where we careen to eventually is taxable income. And just know that this is the point where we take the leap to the tables. Now, this is greatly oversimplifying it. The reason why I really put this first, and you'll see that in our materials, the first 7 or 8 highlights in tax, you'll have a "you are here" little marker. I think it looks something like this. Looks like a guitar pick. You are here. This is where we start the path to your CFP. But in your tax formula, it's essential for you to know where you are at a given point. In my opinion, this is something that gets lost the farther into the tax nuance you get. And I think it's so critical to maintain perspective as you're processing your tax stuff. In fact, as we get deeper into the more nuanced materials, I challenge each of you to zoom out and try to find where in the tax flow this falls. And there are going to be times where it's not completely clear. And the reason is this: your core tax flow, right? Your core form is Form 1040. And there's not going to be as many notes here, just letting you know, because I'm doing a little teaching juggling act here. But Form 1040. Form 1040 is essentially your tax river. That's where the main current comes. And you have a bunch of different sources by way of schedules that flow into that. Form Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule 1, Schedule C. These are all the tax tributaries. And what I'll often say is that despite the politicians time and time again saying we are going to make this ultra efficient and concise, all they've done is really they've taken the stuff on the core form and they've bounced it out to some of these schedules. So it creates the illusion. And I think that illusion is even more telling these days because the way that people do their taxes, right? You go into a TurboTax, for instance, for a lot of people that are self-preparing these days, and you lose sight of how the taxes work all together, how all the little puzzle pieces come together. I encourage you to print this out. It's in your materials. But we want to make a connection between something that is happening that has some sort of tax effect and where that falls in the flow. All right, you want to learn about your different dividends, for instance, right? Your qualified dividends are going to be in one little area and your non-qualified ones are going to be in another area, but they all funnel through to the same stop point. So as you work through this, learn your stop points, because the most common angle that you will see from a higher level in the CFP world is you are given a starting point, and it's going to be one of these fields in dark blue, whether that be income or gross income or adjusted gross income or taxable income or gross tax. One of these is going to serve as your starting point, and they're going to ask you to calculate the next starting point or the next point. the next darkly, shaded point there, dark blue. For instance, you can go from adjusted gross income, and the question might be, what is the taxable income? And if you don't have this reference point, it's going to be really difficult to tease apart what fits where. Because where we go from here is we zoom in a layer, and we start to see at each one of these little points, what's involved? What do we now need to memorize? But you always need to zoom out and think of the entire tax flow. So it goes income, you take away tax exclusions. We're going to talk about that during our next turn through the content. Gross income, deductions for adjusted gross income. That occurs on your Schedule 1. Do you need to know the schedule? Not necessarily. Do you need to know what's on the schedule? Absolutely. And we've highlighted what you really need to know. You go from there, from there to adjusted gross income, right? That's your notorious line. It occurs between the stuff up top and then AGI, a critical figure in tax, because it is going to inform what that taxpayer can do. There are a lot of those ranges on those tables that you see out there that say whether this person is qualified to have this tax benefit or this tax credit issued for their taxes in a given year. A lot of that is driven by AGI, which is why it's so important early on in the tax flow to get those exclusions if they exist, to take advantage of those above the line deductions, because it lowers AGI. Also, the things that occur below the line, your below the line deductions, your deductions from AGI, if you are looking to itemize, there are so many itemized deductions that point to AGI. They're what we call tax hurdles. And the dollars that you spend in one of these, a very common instance is for unreimbursed medical and dental expenses. The magic figure there is 7.5% of AGI. And I mean, you could just reason through this. The higher the AGI figure, the higher the hurdle goes for your itemized deductions. And presumably, the higher the taxable income goes, because you can't drive it down as much if you're itemizing. Okay, so my main takeaway here is ingrain this in your mind, because it's going to serve as our template, and we're just going to go deeper into each one of these nooks.